Hello, this is my second video for Psych 435 with Dr. Gray for Forensic Psychology, and this is my second case brief on Jackson v. Indiana, the Supreme Court case. In 1968, an individual by the name of Theon Jackson, 27 at the time, was charged with 2 accounts of robbery, one for a purse and its contents, which totaled up to $4, and then a cash robbery of $5, which were both said to have occurred a year earlier in July of 1967. This was not any kind of ordinary case because Theon Jackson, just from the beginning, Theon Jackson was a severely mentally handicapped individual. He was also deaf, and he was considered to have the mental capacity that of a preschooler, and the intuition and the comprehension level of, as well as communication level, if that, of preschooler with very limited sign language. The court attempted to communicate with him through a sign language interpreter from a local deaf school. However, there was very little correspondence between Mr. Jackson and the interpreter. He was provided a hearing for incompetency, as was required by Illinois state law, and was examined by 2 professional psychologists, and they both confirmed each other's examinations that Mr. Jackson was severely incompetent and could not be tried as an individual with the competency to come to his own defense, and there was little hope, if any evidence, that Mr. Jackson would ever become competent. So even if he was put into an institution to await his time to become competent or to become sane so that he could be tried for his crimes, for his alleged crimes, which Jackson still pleaded not guilty to. Even if he was put into a mental institution, both examiners said that it was unlikely that he would ever gain enough comprehension or enough mental intuition so that he could become competent to stand trial. Despite that fact, the court did sentence him to an indefinite sentence and mental institution. Mr. Jackson, that is his defense, his attorneys pleaded that, or appealed that this was essentially a life sentence for first of all, minor alleged conviction for an individual that was mentally handicapped. He did not have a for sure set date of whenever he would be released or when they would retry. And both of the forensic psychologists who examined Mr. Jackson said that it was unlikely that he would ever become competent. The sign language interpreter from the local deaf school also testified that even their resources were not extensive enough to help someone as challenged as Mr. Jackson achieve a level of communication that would be necessary in court, and they were unsure of what he even understood that she tried to communicate to him. So this was appealed to the Supreme Court because it was a severe violation of Jackson's rights, which the Supreme Court then held in their hearing, that he did have his rights violated, that while the court followed the law for a hearing of incompetency, they denied him the right to due protection as well as to a speedy trial, because he was given an indefinite sentencing that could have lasted his entire life and most likely would have. So the Supreme Court overturned Jackson's sentencing, and this case became a precedent for how to deal with incompetency, and the Supreme Court overrode Illinois state law. And this became a precedent for every state to then have to define their own sentencing. So there couldn't be just an indefinite time that someone could be sentenced. It would have to be like a certain number of years that the individual would either be kept in an institution and reevaluated and then retried, or then the charges would eventually have to be dropped. This still has some gray area, even though the Supreme Court enacted that states had to define their sentencing for mental institutions and incompetency. There's still some gray area, so that still needs to be worked on in certain states. But overall, it had a severe impact on the justice system for how they were going to handle individuals who would never regain competency.